Zool is back. Does anyone care? More about this and other stories on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
The bizarre true story of the Commodore smartphone.
Reanimating the corpse of Zool.
A classic arcade opens in Bristol.
And MiSTer for the masses, not the classes. All this and our community question of the week on This Week in Retro. Up-to-date news
For out-of-date tech.
Now, John, before we get into our first story, a couple of follow-ups from older stories on recent shows. You may remember that we saw games pulled from GOG, or Good Old Games, recently, and we didn't really know why. They were EA games. Syndicate Wars and Ultima Underworld disappeared from the service. And, well, thanks to user OKFish1962, they've informed us that the games have now reappeared with no explanation. So we don't really know why they went. We don't know why they've come back. We don't know what the reason is for the U-turn. But there they are. So they're back on there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Glad to hear they're back there.
And in ludicrous auction news, a sealed boxed copy of Super Mario Brothers has now sold for $2 million. Absolutely crazy. What were we at last time? I think it was 1.5 million was the last one.
1.5.
Yeah, so we're up to 2 million now. Apparently this is a rare cardboard hang tag version of the box. And it sets a new video game record. And thank you to Bajako6502 for informing us of that. I would write a story about it this week, but it'll only be superseded next week, the way things are going. $3 million next week.
Where is the ceiling? Who knows? Who knows? So, yeah, once we start to see the prices dip back down again, maybe we'll bring it back up. We'll say we've reached the top of the mountain. Neil, if there's one thing that's true these days, it's that brands never really die. At least retro technology brands. You got Polaroid, Atari, Radio Shack. All of these formerly multinational, innovative companies have been turned into, well, something lesser, if I'm being charitable. Perhaps the most interesting and tragic of these corporate takeovers is the tale of our beloved Commodore. Neil, do you have any idea who owns Commodore right now?
That's the question, isn't it? I want to say something like Individual Computing, but I have no idea if I'm right or if they only own part of it. It seems like somebody owns the ROMs, somebody owns the chicken lips. No idea. And I like that you mentioned Polaroid, because of all the companies, Polaroid have absolutely no right to exist anymore based on the technology that they were founded on. Well, how are they still a brand?
Right. It's a miracle. I don't know who wants to buy, a Polaroid branded iPad stylus, but I've seen them. They're out there.
I've got a Polaroid branded Bluetooth speaker. How does that work?
It's like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? But, getting back to Commodore, it's not an easy question because, like you said, between the hardware, the software, the branding rights, not to mention the global nature of the company and everybody, owning different rights in different companies, a whole parade of corporations, and in some cases I use the word corporations very loosely, claim various parts of this formerly great computing empire founded by Jack Tramiel. Since Commodore itself is a common noun denoting naval rank, maybe it's a bit easier to skirt the naming rights than something specific. I don't know. But you might be aware of several Commodore branded pieces of tech that have graced the internet in the past 20 years or so. You had a line of Commodore branded gaming PCs in the mid 2000s. Do you remember that, Neil?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
I got very excited when I heard about them and then realized what they were. Just a badge. Just a badge on a case.
You've got the newly released, of course, the C64, the mini console, the Maxi with the full computer keyboard and all that stuff.
John, do you want some breaking news?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, on this subject, I had an email this morning inviting me to perhaps review, if I'm interested, the new Mini Amiga. From the same people who did the Mini C64, and it's looking like a January release date that they're aiming for. January
that sounds like a bit of breaking news worthy of its own story in a future episode. Look forward to that.
It does, and it sounds like licensing hell.
Yes,
how they've got around this.
Absolutely, it'll be interesting to dig deeper into that. Now, thanks to a tip from our subreddit user, his name is Oz Retro Comp. He tells us about a Commodore cell phone That's right, Neil. A Commodore, mobile phone, as you call them.
Mobile, yes.
Yeah. Now, Neil, when you're in the market for a new smartphone, a new handset, what kind of features are important to you?
Oh, you're really asking the wrong man here, John. My Nokia 8110 4G, it does everything I need. It does phone calls, it does text messages, it does phone calls, everything I need.
But what about a home button replaced with a Commodore logo? Where does that rank?
What is a home button? What is a home button?
Well, surprisingly, Neil, even though your phone may be not as feature rich as some, you're not alone in that not blowing you away. Even though the Commodore phone was released in 2015, there isn't much information on the internet about it until now. That is, YouTuber and blogger Nostalgia Nerd, our friend, has taken a deep dive into the history of the Commodore mobile phone, and what an interesting tale it is. I'll spare you all of the details, but essentially, the phone's existence hinged on that logo that we were just talking about, the chicken head Commodore logo. It was apparently released from trademark after the company was dissolved in 1994. And some crafty Italians bent on capitalizing on using that logo slapped on a generic Android device to market to people like you and me who have, shall we say, a certain passion for the Commodore brand. Now, Neil, this begs the question, does this stuff work for you? Are you apt to buy a new gadget on the basis of just a cool retro branding alone?
I mean, I'd buy a case to put my phone in that might have the logo on, but I don't know that I'd go as far as buying the whole phone just because of a logo. You know, when a new phone comes out, or for that matter, a new movie or a new album or anything like that, if everyone gets hyped up about it, I'm the kind of person that recoils and I kind of let the hype pass. And I get around to it eventually in my own time. And usually it's been hyped for a good reason. And when I get around to watching the movie or using the phone or the bit of tech, I say, yeah, this is great. There's a reason why this was hyped. But I'm not the right person to jump on a bandwagon, especially if it's just based on a logo alone. I'm certainly not what you call an early adopter or a risk taker when it comes to new devices. And it's partly that anti-hype train attitude, I think, that comes because I like to use technology to enhance my life.
What?
I hate nothing more than... I know. Crazy idea. I hate devices that bombard me with information, new information that there's no reason why that information can't wait till the end of the day and be batch processed, if you like. I don't need my emails constantly streaming to me all day. In the work I do, I can check them at the end of the day. I don't need a new device that's going to bombard me, which is part of the reason why I have this Nokia phone. It really helps me to keep a lid on all of that. So, yeah, that's the kind of mindset I'm in and the kind of thing I'm thinking about when I buy a new device. I'm certainly not going to buy a new thing just because it has an Apple on it or because it has the chicken lips on it. Absolutely not, John. No. How about you?
It kind of depends. I'm all about being constantly distracted from anything important that I have to do 100% of the time. So give me all the doodads. But if there's a neat peripheral like a keyboard that can give me all of the existing functionality of the boring Dell model that's right here in front of me, but if it's styled, say, with the colors and the general shape of like a CPC 464 keyboard, and if it's less than $50, I mean, I'm probably in. There's no reason for me not to have an Amstrad lookalike keyboard that I'm using all the time. But if you're going to charge a premium for just a generic device with a logo stamped on it, that's essentially the same thing as something without the logo. That's definitely more of a tough sell. I'm actually pretty interested to see if any of our interesters were among the few to actually receive the Commodore phone, as it did go on sale and it did ship actual units to customers.
Yeah, I seem to remember being at an expo, and I think Dave Pleasance was there, the former MD of Commodore UK, and I'm sure he was waving around a Commodore branded smartphone at the time. So maybe they sent him one. Maybe he bought one. I don't know. I think it must have been the same device. There can't be that many Commodore smartphones out there. But he was pretty chuffed with it at the time.
Yeah, well, if Mr. Pleasance or any of our subreddit users out there are still using the phone, or if you have one in a drawer somewhere, let us know in the comments. And, of course, for the complete tale of the chicken head handset, make sure you check out the full video from Nostalgia Nerd in the show notes.
John, we're on to Zool now. Here's my slightly crushed boxed copy for those watching the video of this podcast. I must sort that out. And if anyone's got any tips for restoring crushed boxes, I'm all ears because I've got lots that I need to work through. It's a skill that I need to get on top of. Now, Zool, for those who don't know, was the 16-bit micro's response to the console mascot. Mario and Sonic, they were like money printing presses at the time. They could sell new games. They could sell new hardware by the lorry load. And, well, we wanted a slice of that pie. But for every successful mascot out there, there were hundreds of failed attempts that just didn't stick. But Zool is perhaps the one that came the closest. It initially showed up on the Amiga in 1992, and funnily enough, it was bundled with the Amiga 1200, but it was an OCS-ECS version, so it worked on an Amiga 500. And an AGA version wouldn't come till later that actually took advantage of the Amiga 1200, typical Commodore.
Yes.
That's the way it went.
Crack delivery of products. Excellent.
Exactly. But it was also sold as a standalone game. And it was successful enough to warrant ports to the Atari ST, to the PC, to the Archimedes. And it would also go on to end up on consoles like the Game Boy, the Master System, the Game Gear, Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo. So it obviously did well enough for people to want to port them. Now, I remember trying this game when it came out, John, and I was kind of underwhelmed. I didn't think it was a bad game. It's not a bad game at all. There's a lot of enjoyment to be had out of it. But I remember seeing reviews that gave it 95, 96, even 97% in the magazines. So they really set the expectation high before I got my hands on it. And of course, it couldn't deliver to that standard. It was colourful. It was fast. It wasn't Sonic fast, but it was fast. And it was fun, but it was just nowhere near the quality of a Mario or a Sonic game. Yeah, what are your memories of Zool, John?
I don't really have any, to be honest with you. Zool kind of flew under the radar. I know that it was ported to the consoles at the time. I never came across Zool until we started the Amigos podcast and we reviewed it. And I will say that among sort of the parade of incredibly lame mascots for the Amiga, I'm looking at you, Guy, from Magic Pockets. The Zool looks cool. I mean, he looks like a rad dude. He's got just the right amount of 90s attitude. He looks kind of antish, although I guess he's not really an ant. He's the representative for an ant-like species, according to the docs. But the problem with Zool is that, you know, by the time that we got to the 16-bit era of platformers, the people that were making the Japanese platforming games had a decade or more of experience in the field, and the development team that made Zool, let's say they had slightly less experience in that particular genre. So it's no great surprise that they were not able to achieve the same heights as Mario or Sonic or whatever. The main problem that I have with Zool is just that it's so difficult. There are so many blind jumps that lead to spikes that it just wasn't that much fun to play, even though it was very pretty. Like you said, it did move quickly. The speed is excellent. But it's hard for me to get excited when I think about Zool, especially Zool in terms of a newer game that may or may not be released again.
Yeah. As a mascot, maybe it was the rebellious teenager in me at the time. I just felt like it was trying too hard.
Yeah.
Sonic felt effortless. Mario was a plumber. If you tried to come up with a new console mascot in 1992, you wouldn't come up with a mustachioed plumber.
Sure.
But he just evolved naturally through the 80s and into the 90s and became the superstar that he is. So it just felt like Zool was trying too hard to catch up. The console gamers and the console magazines were much more used to these platform games, so it rated a lot lower when it was ported to those platforms. Games Master gave it a 70% on the Mega Drive, Super Gamer 85% on the Game Boy. Any game that moves that quickly on the Game Boy is going to be pretty painful on that screen. Oh my gosh,
I can't even imagine the blurring that was involved.
Rated well. And I think about 85% is a pretty fair score for the game overall. Mm-hmm. It wasn't breaking new ground, it wasn't ahead of its class, but it was a nice demonstration of what other platforms were capable of doing when they tried to do a Sonic or a Mario. So, not a bad game. Now, imagine my surprise then when this story was submitted this week by user Starcade2084, and it's the story of Zool being exhumed Studio Sumo Digital has announced Zool Redimensioned. Remember, he's the ninja from the nth dimension,
Yes.
so that's where the tagline comes from. Zool Redimensioned. There's already a listing for this on Steam where you can see a video of it in action and screenshots of the game and a release date of August. So it should be here with us any day now, if that's to be believed. It promises 28 levels of retro gaming action, all the boss battles and mini games of the original game. The more I watch the video, the more I just see the original game. I'm not seeing too many extras here. The main extra that you'll see is that it's more zoomed out, so it's like a HD remake, if you like. They've zoomed out all of those tiles and those sprites to keep them looking nice on a modern screen. The advantage of that, I mean, this might play into your hands. You were complaining about the cruel traps and the blind jumps. Well, you can see a lot more of the playfield now with that HD resolution, so that might make it a bit more enjoyable. But then on the flip side, if you zoom out, you're going to lose speed. So is it all going to be as quick a game as it was? I don't know. I don't know. Looks fun, though. Like I said, it doesn't look like it brings too much new outside of HD resolution, and also Steam achievements have been put in there, so I don't know. Collect 100 Chupa Chups. Oh, it's probably not affiliated with them anymore.
It will be. I have a feeling that the Chupa Chups branding will be carefully removed from all of this. But there's no shortage of things to collect in Zool. It is the ultimate and just random stuff lying around that you pick up all the time type of game.
Yeah, so I'll be watching your Steam profile with interest, John, to see what you unlock. For me, it looks like a pocket money game. You know, release it for £2 and I'll snap it up and I'll play it of an afternoon. Release it for £15 and it's probably going to be a hard no from me. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'd say that if this comes in at under $10, which is, around £7, I might give it a shot. But any more than that, and you're taking a chance on a remake of a game that, let's face it, wasn't hugely great to begin with. I really hope that they do some work on the actual mechanics of the game. It was one of my great disappointments was playing the HD remake of Super Frog, another Amiga classic platformer, and it was beautiful, very, very gorgeous looking game, but they didn't change my main complaint with the game, which was that in most Japanese platformers you have variable height jump. If you tap the button, you jump a little bit, and if you lay on the button, you jump a lot, and that sort of is a big deal to me. It gives you a feel of being in control of your character. And they didn't, the original Super Frog didn't have that. You hit the button and you jump the same height no matter what. They didn't change that with the re-release of Super Frog HD. And to me, it just, the game was gorgeous, but it still played like that same game from, 1992 or 93, whenever it was released. And I guess maybe if you're a fan of Super Frog, that's what you want. But I'm always hopeful that these remakes take advantage of what we've learned and sort of, the advancements in the genre while still giving you the nostalgic hit of playing as, a classic character like Zool. So I don't know, Neil.
Couldn't agree more. And if there's any creature that can do a variable jump, it's got to be a frog, right?
That's right.
Control its legs. Come on, Super Frog. It's funny, isn't it? The difference between a good platformer and a bad platformer can come down to simply a couple of pixels in the arc of the jump. The mechanic is the most important thing of the whole thing. Absolutely. Something else that I've noticed about this game is when I was looking at the small print, I could see that it was developed by Sumo Digital Academy, and that's the talent development arm of Sumo Digital, which takes in graduates and helps them to get their first steps into the games industry. So while a lot of people will have been left scratching their heads saying, why the hell have you brought Zool back? I'd suggest that perhaps this is an exercise in game development and mechanics carried out by those fresh new game developers using an existing game to have, let's say, an achievable target. They know what the rules are, they know what the graphics are laid out for them, so they know it's completely achievable and they can rapidly create this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the reason why ports were so, arcade ports and clones were so prevalent back on the 8-bit computer days, because it wasn't because the programmers weren't capable of doing creative work, but when you're setting out to make your first game, having sort of a roadmap and having an achievable goal that's already been realized, say, on another platform, makes programming a game a lot easier, I think.
Yeah. Programmers are really creative types as well. So it really helps to have all of those creative assets laid out for you as well. So yeah, just bear in mind that releasing it on Steam, it may well be their first ever commercial game. And I'm just taking that from the small print that I've read. And I hope if that's the case, that it brings them enough success to drive their early careers into the games industry. So good luck to them on that count. Now, you can check out Zool Redimensioned by searching for it on Steam. Hopefully, by the time this show goes out, it will be released and we might see the price of it there. Or you can use the link in the show notes to find out more. I'd like to take a quick moment now, John, to say a big thank you to Retrorewind.ca. It's my favourite store for upgrades for my classic computers and my Commodore machines to keep them in top condition. And it's not just parts that Frank and his team offer. He also offers now a very, very high quality recapping service for just $48. And I believe that's 48 Canadian dollars. Where does that sit with US dollars? What's the conversion rate there? Do you know, John?
I think 48 Canadian dollars is something like 30 US dollars. So it's very reasonable.
That's even less than I thought it was then. Yeah, very reasonable. And when you consider how much that C64 or that Amiga means to you, a system that you've cherished for over 3 decades, we're sending it to get a full recap for under 40 US dollars, as you say there. It doesn't seem like a lot of money at all for the joy it brings you and the peace of mind in knowing that you're good to go for another few decades. So check out Retrorewind.ca. They really do offer a world-class service, and we'd like to thank them very much for supporting the show today.
Neil, it's well known that there's a special space reserved in your cave for a secret arcade set to open as soon as you reach that magical goal of 2,000 patrons. On that fateful day, whenever it should arrive, what are going to be the first machines visitors will be greeted with once they pass through that secret bookshelf door?
Yes, right behind me, the bookshelf that one day I hope to be able to swing open and reveal the secret arcade. I'm thinking Gauntlet, Robotron, Outrun, Robocop, Rolling Thunder, Spy Hunter, Star Wars, Commando, Ghosts and Goblins. What else have I got to get in there? Track and Field, Marble Madness, all of them, John. All of the video games.
Just everything. I love it. It's amazing. I hope that one day soon it shall all come to pass. But for people that are looking to satisfy their arcade urges sooner rather than later, I have some exciting news shared by subreddit user Paul, aka Hermsky. Down in Bristol, Neil, I've got to be honest with you. I don't know anything about Bristol. What's famous? What's famous in Bristol? What's Bristol famous for?
You don't know anything about Bristol? It's Gert Lush down there, John, as they say in the West Country. Bristol is closely associated with the engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who you can see a lot of his work there. You've got the Clifton Suspension Bridge. He was basically a giant of the Industrial Revolution with his work on the Great Western Railway and so many other projects. He built these great iron-hulled steamships. I think they were the first in the world, 3 of them, with the idea of extending the Great Western Rail line so you could get off the train, get on one of these steamships and go across the Atlantic to the US. A real revolutionary thinker at the time, an incredibly talented guy. But probably the most famous thing about Bristol is where I met Miss RMC for our first cup of coffee.
Wow.
It's a really nice town. And I also did a lot of IT support there when I used to look after the shop at Bristol Zoo. So that was kind of funny. Replacing switches and wireless access points with gorillas and monkeys just outside the window watching you. Always fun. It's a vibrant university city, a really nice place, Bristol. Not far from here at all.
Oh, okay. Well, if you and Ms. RMC want to rekindle the spark and have that nostalgic cup of coffee together, I'll tell you what you can do right afterwards. There's a new retro arcade that just opened earlier last month called the Lost Arcade Part 2. According to the article that comes from Bristol Live, it's located in the former Peacock store. What's a Peacock store, Neil?
Very low-cost clothing brand.
Okay. It's located in the former Peacock store on the ground floor of the galleries in Broadmead. And get this, Neil, to access it, you have to pass through what's described as a purple time-traveling portal. Maybe you need to reconsider that hidden bookshelf door idea, Neil. You need a purple time traveling portal to access the secret arcade.
For some reason, it's making me think of Day of the Tentacle for some reason. But, yeah, I tried to find a picture of this purple portal, and I wasn't able to on the Bristol Live article. But I've seen the building that it's in, and I really do applaud the use of this old retail space in this way, because high streets are just falling apart here in the UK, and it's something we need to come to terms with and accept and embrace and fix. It was happening long before the pandemic, before Brexit, before anything else. It was just that shift to the convenience and lower price of shopping online. And too many councils around here are just too slow to accept it. And the future of those empty spaces, it needs to be considered now, and they all need to be used in new ways. So top marks to Bristol for allowing this to happen. I've also seen similar things happening in Nottingham. They're doing a really great job over there. So, yeah, I would love to step into the Purple Time travelling portal and make the trip there. And I certainly will, because I'm so close to it. So there's no excuse for me not to go down there. A couple of questions for you, though, John. Where was Part 1? Because this is described as the Lost Arcade Part 2.
They make no mention of where the Lost Arcade part. Well, maybe the Lost Arcade ended up getting lost. Maybe that's and they're just anticipating that to happen again, and so they're calling this one the Lost Arcade Part 2. I don't know.
And also, I've mentioned about the high street here. Are you seeing a similar effect in the US? Are retail spaces collapsing? Because I always think of the US as being more these out of town. Bigger places, where you drive your car to, rather than a high street that you amble down.
Absolutely. I think that there are some places that have been sort of purpose-built high streets that are doing pretty well. Obviously COVID threw a wrench into everything, but sort of an open air walkable place that has a lot of different stores and a lot of different eating opportunities. Those places, there's the closest one is in a city called Columbus in Ohio that's called the Easton Town Center. Those places tend to do pretty okay, but I think that the traditional high street that has a main thoroughfare running down the middle of it with shops on the side that doesn't offer a lot of great parking opportunities, and maybe the sidewalks are a little bit narrow. So even if there are a lot of people, you're sort of jostled around. Those are unfortunately dying a slow death. Of course, there are always plans to turn those things around, and sometimes they work. But at the end of the day, as more and more shoppers go online for what they need, it's a long road to hoe if you're opening a traditional shop. I think you have to offer something more than just walking in, buying something, and leaving. And I think places like these retro arcades that do offer something that you can't, an experience that you can't purchase online. That's really the way forward.
You just described every British town there is, narrow sidewalks, lack of parking. And the funny thing is the council's response in a lot of these places is to just increase parking prices.
That'll bring them in.
Don't get it. Anyway, let's get back on point with this arcade. What has this arcade in Bristol got to offer when I go and step through that portal?
It holds about 100 arcade machines. So there's 80s classics. You got Pac-Man, all the way up through the mid 90s, according to the article. So, probably tops out at around Street Fighter 2. I think beyond that, you end up getting into the larger, more purpose-built machines like the snowboard simulator games and things like that are probably more expensive, more, to keep up and also just to own in terms of floor space. I will say that, if you're looking for a typical selection of games you're familiar with, this is probably the place to go. If you're looking for maybe more obscure titles that you might not find in every retro arcade, I don't know if this is going to deliver on that. This seems like it's sort of a shotgun approach where they want to please the casual consumer. But that there's a lot to say for having something like that close to home, if you're in the Bristol area. The arcade also boasts an exhibit all about the history of consoles, and I guess has a hands-on area where you can try a selection of home systems.
Oh, okay, so there's home consoles. Are we going to see microcomputers there as well? Do you know?
I don't think so. The article doesn't mention it. And I'm guessing that it all comes down to ease of use for your, like I said, your casual consumer, your person on the street. Even if somebody just strolling in that's getting ready for a day of shopping grew up with a Commodore 64, they might not remember to type load splat (8, 1) to run a game. Consoles are plug and play. You know this. You fire it up, you put in a game, you hit power, and you're ready to go. And let's face it, they're also less prone to break down without warning than our favorite retro computers are. But there may be some classic computing action in what's described in the article as an immersive exhibition explaining the history of video games and gaming culture. So I don't know what that entails exactly, but it's nice to know that there's more to the place than just a bunch of arcade games set to free play. Speaking of free play, you're free to linger and play as much as you'd like with the price of a ticket. You can spend the single day ticket costs £9, or you can buy a season pass, and the season pass runs from now until the end of September. I don't know if the Lost Arcade is going to close down then, and if it's going to reappear as the Lost Arcade 3 somewhere else, or what's going on with that, but it's going to cost you £150. That's quite a bit of money, Neil. What do you think about that value proposition?
Well, I'm guessing we're coming towards the end of the season. I don't know how long a season is, how long
it runs through the end of September.
Well, £9 seems reasonable for a day. Mm-hmm. I'd probably pay £9 a shot and go and spend a good day there. Take a bit of extra money for a plate of chips and some burgers or something, some refreshments.
Right.
But it doesn't sound too bad. £150 I wouldn't pay right now to take me to the end of September, because I would only get down there a couple of times between now and then.
I guess if you live next door, maybe it's worth it. Now, if you are under 18, they knocked down the price to under only £120. But I have a feeling that a lot of under 18s aren't going to have that kind of pocket money to throw at a retro arcade. But who knows? To book a ticket and to enter through the purple time travel tunnel yourself, head on over to historyofvideogames.co.uk.
John, what I have here in my hands is a never before publicly seen or explained outside of my Patreon posts, a world's first. This is the MiSTer Multisystem, a prototype 001. It's got the serial number on the back, 001, which I've been testing out. And what it is, well, what I'll do actually, I'll send producer Duncan lots of footage of this in action now. So if you're watching the video, you can see what this is capable of. Here, the footage should hopefully be on the screen now. Now, many of you will be familiar with the MiSTer project, and that's what this taps into. It's basically a retro console that can run all of your favorite systems. The MiSTer project, it's been around for some time now. It covers consoles, it covers arcades, and it covers classic microcomputers. But instead of using software emulation like you have in MAME or in RetroPie or many of the other alternatives, it uses an FPGA chip. Now, what that means is each system is described in great detail in a core, and you download the core, and when you run that, it configures the FPGA or field programmable gate array. And what that's doing is it's setting all of the logic inside that chip, all of the logic units, to be exactly like the original hardware. It's a malleable chip, if you like, that can take the form of any other chip, or chips. You can partition it up and make it into all of those original chips in a system. So as a result, it gives you the most authentic experience that I've personally ever come across when emulating systems. In fact, I shouldn't use the word emulating because people frown on it. If you
people
call
get really upset when you use
they
the
get really
E-word,
upset.
Neil. Yeah.
So it's the most authentic experience that I've had outside of using the real hardware. And of course, it brings you all the convenience that comes with it, of things not exploding or dying or just getting too old to use. So, you really have to try it out to feel what I mean. Now, there are a few ways that you can get into FPGA gaming. One of them is to just throw money at devices, buy analog. You'll have seen these beautiful devices like the Analog NT and all of the other ones that they do. They're quite expensive, and they tend to be dedicated to a single system, or in the case of their PC Engine setup, a family of systems. And the other is to use the MiSTer, which over the years has evolved really quite organically.
The MiSTer is where you buy lots of boards and then you kind of create a stack of them to create the kind of MiSTer experience you want, right?
Yeah, that's how it's been so far. So you start off with this thing called the D10 Nano board. That's the board that has the FPGA chip on it. And you can actually run some cores with just that board and nothing else. But to get the most out of it, you need extra things on there. And that's where you need to start buying RAM modules. You need to buy a USB hub to add on to it. You need to buy an I/O board to give you VGA or SCART or composite output or whatever it is that you want to use it for, especially if you want to use original monitors. This thing is really good with CRTs and gives you a really good authentic experience. So you end up with this stack of boards. For a new person who wants to get into this, it can be a little bit intimidating, a bit confusing as to know where to start, and it can be quite expensive. And that's where the MiSTer Multisystem comes into play, because what we've created, and I say we, this has been created right here in the cave. There's an electronics company right below my seat right now on the floor below me who I've been working with, who are massive retro fans. Long-term viewers of my channel will remember that when I was looking for a new place to set up the cave, it was them who approached me and said, we've got some space here and we'd love you to come here. That's how big retro fans they are. So they've developed this and we've been testing it out. And so what it is it's a single board, so you don't have to have that big stack of things. The D10 snaps onto it, and that's it. You've got everything. You've got 128 meg of RAM on board. You've got all the USB ports, both externally, and there's internal USB headers, so you can put internal expansions in there. It's got HDMI output, SCART, RGB SCART output, VGA output, optical audio, 3.5mm audio out and in, so you could feed those old cassette tapes in if you really want to watch tapes load in real time, as I know you love so much, John.
Every day I fire up my Spectrum Plus 2 and just let those tapes load.
It accommodates snack adapters, some of which I've got on here, and these are all the different adapters that let you use original game controllers, so you can plug in your NES controller or whatever, with nice low latency, so you can plug those in. A whole host of other things which I'll cover in upcoming video. But what's important here is that it contains everything that you could possibly need to take those first steps into the MiSTer world with a single board, and this single board that we've made costs less than buying all of those individual boards. So you're not paying extra for the convenience. Hopefully, this is the way I see it, it's the perfect first step into the MiSTer world, and hopefully a no-brainer. That's the plan anyway. Yeah, but wait, John, there's more. My favorite bit of this whole system is that we've put an expansion port at the front. And what this allows you to do is expand it even further. So an example of an add-on that we've created for it is a jammer harness that you just snap onto the front, and then you can plug it directly into an arcade machine.
Oh, fantastic.
And the video output and the controllers and everything will just work. We've worked on a snap-on Pi MT32 add-on, so you can snap a Pi on there and it will emulate the MT32 audio device from Roland, and you could use that with the PC core and play Monkey Island with lovely MIDI music and all of that stuff. So yeah, it's a really nice system. It's come together really well. We're currently in the beta testing stage, so we've got about 10 units out there at the moment being tested here and externally. And it should come to market in October, all things going well. We've also created a reference design case, which we've 3D printed. So you've seen that in the one that I've held up. If you're not watching the video, I would describe it as being sort of an evolution of the PC Engine kind of style case. It's got a real 90s feel to it. And we're going to make the 3D printer files freely available to everyone so that they can print their own. Just right now on the 3D printer, I can't wait to show you this, is a global hypercolor case, which is 3D printing. So it changes color with the temperature, 3 different colors. Now, what that will do is it will allow us to show you the airflow, because a few people have said, is it going to get too hot in there? Well, if we can show you the heat in terms of the color on the case, you'll see the airflow where it goes right across the middle of the case and keeps everything cool. So we've been having a lot of fun with it, as you can tell. It's produced in the UK. And it's not me sat in a corner hand soldering these things. We can produce 15,000 of these a month if we want to, John, using the connections that Heba, the electronics company, have. So it's a real professional job here that they've done. I'm not expecting to sell 15,000 a month. I mean, I'll be driving a Ferrari next month if that's the case. But I'm just trying to drive home the point that I'm not hand soldering these. So fingers crossed. Every board will have a 2 years warranty, such is our confidence in the quality of this thing. And I can't wait to get it to market. And I've been itching to tell everyone about it for ages. So hopefully between what I've described and any footage that Duncan's been able to show you, you've got the idea of what this thing's capable of. John, that's my Dragon's Den pitch. Based on your MiSTer experiences, are you on board with this thing?
Well, I've been the proud owner of a MiSTer for about 6 months now. I got on board earlier this year, and let me just say this. If you don't know what a MiSTer is, it's fantastic. If you can bring the MiSTer experience home, and I mean the experience of being able to easily simulate and switch between multiple classic computers and consoles in a way it's just not possible through traditional PC and Raspberry Pi emulation. If you can bring that experience to even more people, maybe people that were scared off by the initial investment and the construction of the board with all the bits and bobs, Godspeed to you and your team, Neil. I can't wait to see this thing in action.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it in people's hands. I must try and get a board over to you, John.
Oh, I'd love it. I'd love to try it out.
Haven't you? So I see what I can arrange for you as a US beta tester, perhaps. But we've got lots of impartial reviews lined up with some big channels, so people will be able to see what this is capable of without me waving my arms around like Stan in Monkey Island, the salesman. So I'm looking forward to seeing other people's opinions of this. But I'm pretty confident that we've got a very good thing here, a very good thing for the community, for the MiSTer community, because the more people can get involved, then the better. Looking forward to getting it out there. So if you'd like to find out more, keep an eye on my YouTube channel, where I'll get some previews out in the coming weeks. We'll give you an insight into some of the things that the beta testers are testing it out on. I know one in particular is trying it out with a NES Zapper to see how accurate this thing is in terms of the timing with the light guns. That'll be a great test. And we're really going to test this thing to destruction. And we'll show you lots of the really cool extras that we're working on. So I'm excited. Can you tell, John?
Yeah. I've never seen you this ecstatic about anything, Neil. Neil, last week's community question of the week was, what classic game would you like to see in Tate mode? Of course,
not Tate.
Yeah, not Tate.
Tate.
And for those of you not up on your Japanese arcade terminology, this just means portrait mode. Swinging your monitor up and around so you're playing the games in a vertical orientation. And the topmost upvoted response comes from our own producer, Duncan Stiles. He says, you mentioned the Amiga's pinball games in Tate mode, and I seem to remember that the versions available for the PSP allowed you to rotate the game 90 degrees. So that's something that I wasn't aware of. I guess that I at least one of the Pinball Dreams, Fantasies, etc. were released for the PSP, and you kind of get this already. So that's pretty cool.
Because by the PSP era, we're into widescreen aspect ratio.
Right.
So you've got a nice long screen when you turn it sideways.
Right, and being a portable system, it's not difficult to convert it into portrait orientation. He says games like Pang could benefit from more vertical space. I agree about that. Then he asks a question. He says, would you keep the sprites the same size and sacrifice horizontal space, or reduce sprite size to keep the level the same width? What do you think about that, Neil?
Good question. I would probably keep everything proportional, so I would reduce the sprite size, I think.
I think that's the way to go. Sheepy Tina says Ice Climber, for similar reasons to Rainbow Islands. It's a vertical platformer with no horizontal scrolling. Yeah, Ice Climber is a great. And speaking of games that need a control update, I would love to see a new version of Ice Climber that actually controls well. That would be fantastic.
Good choice. And nice to hear from Tina.
Yes. And Starcade 2084 says, every console pinball game immediately came to mind, from Sonic Spinball to Kiss Pinball. But what about a light gun game? Duck Hunt in Tate mode would allow for the ducks to fly higher and further away if there was more vertical space on the screen. Yeah, that's true. And he also mentions elevator action. He says even the arcade version was in standard mode. Tate mode would allow for seeing more of the floors below, allowing Agent 17 to better plan his escape. To me, that's the number one answer right there. I'd forgotten that the arcade version of elevator action action was in 4x3 standard mode. So a Todd Day version would be great.
Well, my mind's wandering now. I'm just thinking about games in duck mode.
just picture the annoying goose game ported to everything, and that's duck mode. This week's community question of the week is: what would it take for you to buy a Commodore smartphone? Please post your responses in the subreddit, and we'll read the top 3 most upvoted responses on the air next week.
I got a feeling the top response is going to be a suitcase full of cash.
Are they giving these away? Then I might be in.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from RMC and John Shawler. It was produced by me, Duncan Stiles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you'd like to support the show, please check out the links to our Patreon and Ko-fi pages in the show notes or in the YouTube description. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.